pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, can we do a roll call?
Mr. Alvazar,
Present.
Mr. Esquaga,
Here.
Chair Bybee,
Here.
Mr. Chapman,
Here.
Mr. East,
Present.
Commissioner Hill,
Here.
Mr. J,
Present.
Mr. Murdoch,
Here.
Mayor Sheedy.
Here.
Enthusiasm.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to item B, comments from the floor by the public. Do we have public comments, Madam Clerk? Anyone want to make public comments at this time? Okay, so none, I will close item B and move to item C, consent agenda. That has two items on it. Looking for a motion for consent agenda approval.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Hill.
Second.
Second by Mr. J. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number D1, RSCVA Board Appointment of Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitors Bureau. Board of Directors C pursuant to NRS 244A.6011D3. So we are considering an appointment today to replace Mr. Chapman, who's been here his 2 terms, so 4 years he served on this board, and that's our term limit. So we are looking today we have 2 seats to be presented. And actually your seat expires January 31st. So this will be effective the 1st of February. And they have nominated, his board has nominated Greg Long and Blaine Johnson for appointment. If approved, it's effective February 1st, and will be a 2-year term. Do I have anything we need to add?
So the only thing I'll add is that these appointments are open for discussion and input from the entire board, but it's voted on by the 3 elected officials.
So I guess, do I need a motion second and then discussion?
So you can have discussion and then one of the.
Okay, we'll open the discussion. Any discussion on,
Really quickly,
uh-huh.
I don't know either of these individuals, and I'm sure they're both fantastic. Maybe, Andy, you want to talk a little bit about who they are, what they do in your community,
Sure,
and that, anything you think we should know.
sure.
That'd be
So,
great. Thank you, Mayor.
So Greg Long, who is here in the audience with us today, he's our Chief Operating Officer at Travel North Tahoe, Nevada, for the Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitor Bureau. So Greg's been working alongside myself and the rest of the team up there for 6, 7 years now. He had lived in Tahoe for 30 some odd years before moving down to the Carson Valley recently. Worked in the advertising field for some time, very involved in the outdoor recreation concepts of Tahoe, so very engaged in Tahoe. I'm sure he would be happy to say a quick hi as well to the board. And then Blaine Johnson is a board member of ours as well. He does term out at the end of this fiscal year, but he owns Sun Bear Realty, and he has been on my board for about 9 years. Very involved in the community from both a realtor standpoint, but as well as short-term rentals and vacation rentals, I should call it, up there in the basin. And has been very involved in the business associations and others in the Incline area.
Okay.
All right.
Any other questions or discussion before I look for motion? Ms.
Just
Hill?
quickly, I'm just curious how many applicants did you got?
Um,
How do you advertise for them?
Our board brings forward 2 nominees to this board. for
But do you go
consideration.
out to your community and say we have, or your members?
We work through our board to bring the two names. So we had an internal discussion with our board chair and another board member to discuss who would be the appropriate nominees. Because our understanding is we bring forward 2 names for this board's consideration.
I'm just curious because the chamber, they open it up to everyone that's a member. And
Right,
so
we
then
are not a
people kind
member,
of,
we're not a member
oh,
organization.
you're not? Okay. All right. I'll
Ms.
defer
Hill.
to you. I'm sure both of them are great.
They're both great applicants. I am just hesitant to put Mr. Johnson on because he is going to be going off of the board. And so, I have worked with Mr. Long and I think he's a professional and I think he brings a lot to this board. So, that's where I'm leaning towards.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, I'm looking for a nomination. A motion, excuse me.
Motion have to come from an elected.
Does the motion have to come from the elected?
Okay,
so
I
I
would, all right. I move, to nominate Mr. Long.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I guess there's just three of us. All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Welcome, Mr. Long.
Thank you, I look forward to it.
Yeah, I don't know if we want him to, do you want to say anything?
You want me to stand up at the?
Yeah, that'd be great, just yeah, where there's a microphone. Yeah, you want to feel what you got yourself.
He does, he's been watching. Andy's been telling you, oh no, it's terrible board.
And he's still here.
I've watched a lot of these meetings online. so,
Uh-oh.
But I do have a long history in the area. I think that's what I wanted to get across. I moved to Lake Tahoe in 1989, been there ever since, graduated from UNR, worked at an advertising agency in North Lake Tahoe for 18 years, where we specialized in travel tourism work for all those years. So I do have a long history here in the region. Worked for Andy for 6 years, but no longer than that as a client when he was at the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association of our agency. So I look forward to helping serve this board and doing the best I can.
All right, well, welcome.
Thank you, welcome,
Thank you.
welcome, we welcome you, and we'll see you at February meeting.
Yes, you will.
Yeah, and with that, I would like to give my sincere thank you to Mr. Chapman for 4 years diligent work on this board. Your commitment, your knowledge from aviation to the lake especially, because that's who you're representing, and that's been an important voice that we have here on Radio Tahoe, to have that Tahoe voice, and you've been amazing. I just want to thank you for your time, sir. Much appreciated. Okay, moving on to item D2. RSCVA Board Appointment of the Nevada Resort Association Board of Directors seat pursuant to NRS 244A 6011D4. We will be considering the appointment, the nomination from the NRA, and the NRA has nominated Stephen Esquaga for reappointment. Just clarification that the attorneys gave me on an initial appointment like we just did for the other seat. We have to have two names submitted, whether it's the Chamber, NRA, the airport, we have to have the two names. But when it's a reappointment, we don't necessarily have to have two, and the NRA was contacted and they have chosen to ask for a reappointment for Mr. Esquaga's second term. He's been on for 2 years. Anything else legal needs to add?
Yeah, so I want to clarify. So, and it was the result of some internal confusion. So if you look at the letter from the NRA, they actually named Mr. Esquaga and Pat Flynn for consideration. We only included Mr. Esquaga on the agenda, so we're only agendized to consider reappointing Mr. Esquaga. If you want to consider Pat Flynn, we can do that, but it would have to be at a future meeting.
Well, I think it's settled. Easy enough. So can I make the motion? I assume it's the
Yeah, I
whole
think
board,
that-
right?
Same rule.
Okay.
Same rule, so still just the three electeds.
Yep.
Still just the three
All right.
electeds, go.
I'd love to approve Stephen Esquaga.
second,
Okay, motion in a second. All those in favor? Aye.
I,
Okay, anyone opposed of the three of us? Yeah,
Maybe Stephen's opposed.
okay. Motion is carried
I
unanimously.
appreciate, I don't think Pat knew that he was even looking over the. Break the news to him when I get back to work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, though. Look
Yeah.
forward to another.
And once again, for Stephen too, for those of you who don't know, you served, this is your second round. How many years ago was it you were on RSCVA 20? You're not that old. Really? Okay, yeah, so this is his second, not only his second term, but he's come back after being off many years, so brings some historical perspective to the organization, and a great voice, from the Peppermill and from, the gaming side, the NRA side, great representative. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have approved both of those. Next up is item E1, review, discussion, and possible action to approve funding for the Incline Village Crystal Bay Tart Connect Micro Shuttle Project. We are being asked today to review, discuss, possibly take action to approve a request by Travel North Tahoe to provide matching funds for the fiscal year 2023-24 Tart Connect Incline Village Crystal Bay Zone 3 Micro Shuttle Project in the amount not to exceed $350,000. So are you going to make the presentation, Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to.
Go up there, because you have a short presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
My swan song. So all it's getting pulled up. So thank you for the opportunity to discuss this. For the record, Andy Chapman, President and CEO of Travel North Tahoe, Nevada. So this is a familiar subject. I talked to this board last year in September of 2022 with a similar request, and we appreciate the funds that this board did bring forward to help support micro transit in the Incline area. A little bit about the program itself. We're in the middle of we're about 2.5 years into a 3-year pilot program. It was originally a 2-year pilot program, working with our partners, both Washoe County, Washoe RTC, and I'll discuss a little bit how this program works. And Placer County, who actually runs the transportation service in Washoe Tahoe on behalf of RTC, Washoe RTC. But in that 2.5 years, so there's 6 zones now on the North Shore, and we are just under 900,000 ridership within that 2.5 years across the system itself. Within Zone 3, which is the Incline Crystal Bay zone that we're talking about right now, we're just over 270,000 passengers. This thing has been a game changer, and I'm going to show you some data slide points on how the increase of ridership has happened over time. Just to touch a little bit about, again, how this got put together, leading into and just around the pandemic timeframe, transportation is one of the key elements that we're dealing with in North Lake Tahoe. That's not unknown to you folks here, because we've talked about that for quite some time. We have 2-lane roads around the lake. We're not expanding roads. The only way to really deal with some of our issues that we have to deal with are through transportation enhancements. And I know Commissioner Hill sits as chair of the Tahoe Transportation District. I'm a representative on that from the Trucking North Tahoe Transportation Management Association as well. So going back to the first year of 21-22, the total cost of the program was about $782,000. And I'm going to show some slides here in a minute. And again, I'm just going to go over a few things. And most of that cost was borne by our organization. Our board stepped up. We're about a $1.8 million organization at that time, and we put in about $400,000. So a significant piece of our organization went in there. Washoe RTC stepped up to the plate. Washoe County put some additional funding in, and then we had local matching funding. We did that for a couple of years, and as our board set this up as, okay, we can't be the primary funders. We understand the pilot program. We want to get it going. We'll have to get other people involved. Last year, we had Washoe RTC again contributed $290,000, RSCVA, and appreciate that, $350,000. The county put in, the board of supervisors put in $100,000, and then some local funding of just over $100,000 as well. So then to touch a little bit on the ridership here. I know this is a little bit of an eye chart, but you can see the increases that have happened. The first ones on the far left are summer 21, 22, and 23. And you can see we've had a 62% increase this last summer based on the first summer 21. In the fall, you see the kind of the purplish color and the light blue color. Fall and spring initially, we were only operating 4 hours a day from 6 p.m. to midnight. And then there's TARP mainline services is contemplated in some of these numbers here as well that you'll see in a minute. This last year, we increased that, service hours in fall and spring to 14 hours. And again, we're seeing a lot of use of this facility. You can see that the winter time as well is, kind of in that, blue and, kind of brownish, so about a 12% increase over the last year as well. And then when you look at passenger, per vehicle service hour, this is kind of a key metric for transportation authorities to look at. And we continue to see increases in that, passenger per vehicle service hour. The other key component we we're looking at with TART Connect, and again, it's a ride share concept. It's free to the user, which is important, but somebody does pay for it, obviously. But if you do single rides, you eat up a lot of your time. So a single ride, getting picked up at the Hyatt and maybe going to Crystal Bay for an evening. If you could do multiple people per run, you really save on efficiencies. And you can see in this last fall of 2023, we had about 55% ride share. And in the summer, about 67% ride share. So those are really good numbers too. Yeah. The other one that was always a question was, are we just cannibalizing TART mainline service? So again, Placer County operates TART mainline service, and they do coordinate the TART Connect for us on behalf of Washoe County and Washoe RTC particularly. And we are seeing both of those transportation services increase ridership. So we're not cannibalizing one for the other. And again, the TART Connect is for very short trips. You have to stay within your zone. Like I can't take TART Connect from Crystal Bay to North Star. I could get to Crystal Bay from, say, again, the Hyatt, and then I could take mainline service to get to North Star to go skiing or something like that. The other thing we spend quite a bit of time on is the resident versus visitor and second homeowner stats. So we're up to about 40% resident. That's been increasing over the first couple of years. Initially, it was about 20%. So a very high usage of the residential population, which is good because it keeps cars off the road. But again, we're seeing more utilization by the visitors coming in as well. Talking about the funding, and this slide also includes TART mainline fixed route, which is about 629,000. We're talking about TART Connect, which is about 1.2 million each year. So right now, what we have confirmed for this current fiscal year we're in right now, the RTC put in an additional 350,000. I want to thank Mr. Hill and Washoe County Commissioners for $400,000 that were put in for this year as well. We have put in about 75,000 to our organization. We're still getting local funding of about 85,000, and then obviously the request here today for the RSCVA at 350,000. And I am not Jamie Wright, so that is her slide. Happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. And again, very important service. I would welcome Commissioner Hill to speak on behalf of CVA too as well, just with her role as chair of TTD and the importance of this type of a transit program within our jurisdiction.
Commissioner Hill?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I was very cautious about microtransit when I first started on the TTD board. I thought fixed route was the way to go. But with how spread out we are in Tahoe, the inclines that we have, and the amount of single family homes, we don't have the density to make a ton of fixed route work. And so what we've seen with microtransit is it's been an incredible asset to the community, but I'm really glad I didn't see that updated visitor slide until you put that together in our packet to see that it's up to 40% for the visitor, because I know that was a concern of this board. But the idea is to continue to support this program and get more vans on the road, get more visitors to explore Tahoe without using their private car and without creating additional congestion. We spoke to this. There's an interim committee for TRPA and Marlette Lake that Senator Daley was just nominated to be the chair of. And we spoke to microtransit and fixed route being, really important to both the workers, the visitors, and the locals. And he was really enthusiastic about the work that we're doing and also the support that RSCVA has given. He had a lot of questions about that. So thank you to this board for your continued support of destination stewardship, because that's the important part of what we do.
Okay. Mr. J.
New to the board, so, I've got a lot of questions and I apologize. Probably have already been through a lot of these, but, I just need to be able to wrap my head around this a little bit more. First question, I'll just kind of list them all off and then we can deal with them is, why the RSCVA? When I look at our mission statement, RSCVA is responsible for putting heads and beds at Washoe County lodging properties, marketing their services, blah, blah. Function to attract overnight visitation around town. That's kind of one of my questions. I see we got a little bit of a breakdown between residents and tourists. Okay, fair enough. Also told that, and I can't substantiate this, but the last $350,000 check that was presented from RSCVA was deposited into the general fund of the Incline Village Improvement District. I'd like to know if that is correct, and if so, why was it put in the general fund? And do we have some kind of audit, if it was in there? What is the ROI to RSCVA? What's our direct on this? What other agencies have been approached for funding? And I've heard, and again, I cannot substantiate it, but I'd like to hear, that was Washoe County School District approached in the past for some kind of funding. You know, if we fund this, then what other transportation agencies come to us saying, hey, you did this, we want this now? Is it our job as RSCVA to fund transportation? You know, why in the past has RSCVA given more than the Regional Transportation Commission? You know, they've given less than what we have. I think that's a, you know, shouldn't RTC be funding this? You know, and Placer, I'm sorry, it's a California agency. You know, we are focusing on Reno, Sparks, Tahoe area. How does that fit into our mission statement? Well, those are questions I have right now. Thank you very much.
Andy, I'll let
Yeah,
you
thank-
address some of them. I might have a point or two to add,
Yeah.
but I'll let you and Commissioner Hill
Sure.
answer this
So
first.
I'm gonna start on the last one you mentioned there, Mr. J, on the Placer County. So Placer County has an interagency agreement with RTC to operate transit in Washoe, Tahoe. So it is difficult for RTC to provide both labor and equipment to go up and down Mount Rose Highway every day. So Placer County is already operating within that jurisdiction, and they have operated on behalf of Washoe RTC for well over 20 years. The microtransit project is slightly different, and when that came up, the two organizations did amend their contract so that Placer County could operate microtransit again on behalf of RTC. So that answers that one. Your question about why RSCVA. So when you look at the 13% tax that is generated in Incline Crystal Bay, we generate about $65 million of room revenue annual, give or take. There's a 13% tax. Of that tax, 3 5/16% by apportionment comes back to our organization. But the RSCVA keeps 3 5/16% for their general fund. So that's about $2.1 million, $2.2 million annually. Now, as Tahoe has changed over the last few years, and as we have focused on destination stewardship, and, you know, how are we really managing the destination for future destinations? And we would love to give probably a destination stewardship presentation to this board. And know Ben's on that committee as well. Maybe we can put that on a future agenda. But the way we deal with Tahoe has changed. It can't just be a more. It can't just be the RSCVA spending dollars using Tahoe to promote, when we have to be cautious and conscious about how we do that. So there is $2.2 million coming down the hill that go to the RSCVA that we believe could be utilized for these types of services, because we have to provide this type of service. It is a different organization than we are. So you mentioned the Incline Village Improvement District. The $350,000 did go to TNT&V, and then we paid directly to Placer County through the Tahoe Transportation or the Trucking North Tahoe Transportation Management Association to Placer County to provide those services. So Placer County contracted with the provider, which is Downtowner, and then but Placer County cannot spend California money on Nevada services. which is why we pass the hat in order to make sure we have the service.
So it's a pass through and it did go into the general fund?
So the 350,000 went into our organization's, account, our general fund, you can call it. And then we paid through the TMA, who then got the bill from Placer County. It's complicated because Placer County I couldn't pay Placer County directly because I don't have a contract with Placer County. I have a contract with the TMA, which is the Transportation Management Association for the North Shore region. And then they had that contract with the county. So basically the county billed the TMA for those services, the TMA billed us for those services. Now Washoe RTC and Washoe County funds go direct to Placer County to support the transit services.
So
And
Washoe County and them are paying a California agency for transportation.
yes, because they're providing that service on their behalf to their residents and visitors.
Thank you.
And then I think just the last one, I think you had, or maybe I covered all of this. Like, Alexis, I don't know if you had any.
I think you did a good job of addressing the issue. I think that it's a tough situation. I wish IVGID would give money to the service. I think they should. Their employees use it, their residents use it, but their board has decided to really strictly look at their, I don't know what you call it, it's not a charter, but whatever IVGID is formed under, we only do sewer, we only do recreation, we only do solid waste. And we're not gonna do anything even remotely outside of that box. So I wish they'd come to the table on many things like workforce housing as well, because they also play a role in that, but they have not, and the board right now is made up, will not do that. But we have asked for other support. I know that we've asked the League to Save Lake Tahoe. They have given us support in the past. We've also asked the Tahoe Fund. They have given us support. And so, we are trying to find, people that could come to the table to support this project, because we do not have sustainable transportation funding in Tahoe. The other issue is this is more expensive than it should be, because we are not going through a federal grant system, and it's Placer, thank God, has finally gone out to a bid on this, and we will be going through a federal, right, next season, is that when it?
And I was gonna mention on that if I can.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
the reason why we have passed the hat, and how Placer County is funded, they're funding it almost entirely on TOT. So Placer County, Eastern Placer County, the TOT funds that are raised there through their efforts, almost 100% take care of all of their transportation on this Target Connect program. Because we didn't go after, or because we weren't able to do an RFP, and I don't know the specifics on how the federal transportation utilizes the grant monies, but you have to go through a pretty specific RFP process for transportation. You have to have certain qualified drivers for it. But this is a turnkey operation where we've hired a provider called Downtowner that does this across the nation. They're actually doing it in South Lake Tahoe as well now, to provide those services. We're now going to go through that RFP process, in partnership with Placer County and RTC, who is very involved in this, so that we can have that opportunity to get federal funding, like Fixed Route. That Fixed Route gets federal funding. And there is Fixed Route money that comes in through the federal government, through the Tahoe Transportation or the TRPA, that apportionment goes to Placer County, and then they put a portion against that to the Nevada side service for Fixed Route. Not to get too complicated, but it does get very
Do we
complicated.
have just two more than, so it did, is in their box and they won't sell.
Right.
I kind of see it this way, in my opinion. We're being asked to step outside of our box to provide for transportation, which in my opinion isn't the function of RSCVA. And the second one is, if we fund this, what budget does it come out of? It has to come from somewhere. So what budget would be affected by this?
Is that a pertinent question for budget?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So for Q2, you'll remember that we reduced our room tax revenue predictions, and we came in pretty spot on. We're only about $90,000 over what those predictions were. So obviously we could put that $90,000 towards it. We do have
a little bit of additional revenues related to investment income for the second quarter, so we can put that towards TARP. And then it would be up to the board if they wanted to reduce other areas of the budget or dip into the rainy day fund to pay for the remainder.
And Richard, maybe I can help on the, when you asked why, that it's, you know, what are we doing with transportation? And when you first brought this to us, that was a big question around the table, you know, what are we doing with it, with transportation? And I think, really, we look at our strategic plan, and part of it is being good stewards and the stewardship of Lake Tahoe right now, which is the prime driver when people are traveling here and marketing, our marketing efforts. Our draw to the region is Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, but the lake is our biggest draw. And we've seen since COVID, the impact on the lake, to protect the lake, to really address the serious issue of transportation, the environment, the whole stewardship, that lake stewardship that all those committees and, you know, that Ben McDonald sits on, that are really trying to find solutions to stewardship of our most precious commodity really in the region. And this piece of transportation, to get cars off the road. And as importantly, in the beginning, it was a lot of locals. And we're as a tourism, we're like, oh my God, what are we doing? Why are we doing this for locals when we're tourism and travel, and how is that benefiting? But at the end of the day, my take on that was really the restaurants and the hotels won't be open if those locals can't get to work. I mean, we are providing that locals are taking that to get to work at a restaurant, to get to work at a store. And it's helping tourism in the end because you're providing a service. And I'm glad to see the numbers have changed as far as, you know, residents and tourists. And I know you've tried to increase awareness for tourists that don't want to leave, you know, don't want to get out of their car. And that's a process everywhere. How do we get people, especially in a region like ours that we don't have mass transportation here. We just don't, we're not big enough. So it's different than if you go to a big city and you're used to jumping on the subway or the L or BART to get somewhere. So it's a different mindset, but really it is our strategic plan that talks about stewardship efforts. So it's transportation, but it's that stewardship of Tahoe, and it does indirectly, I think, relate to workers, to businesses, and to you know, for the lake and for the people up there, and will help, you know, at the end. So that's really what I would say of why that's important to this organization. And I guess I do have a question, Andy, because this is a pilot program. Initially, you said it was 2 years, and you push it into the third year. So, and we've given each year. So, and you just talked about federal funding. So can you clarify, would this be the last year you probably need our support
Yeah,
so that you can move into federal funding and other sources?
Thank you. So last year when I was here, and the RSCVA participated in 1 year so far, so not the first year we did come answer. Last year I did comment that there could be a second year request because of the fact that we are still trying to figure out that sustainable funding. We do have to figure that out. The lake in general has to figure out transportation funding. I mean, there was a lot of work done a couple of years ago on this One Tahoe exploration into what kind of funds are out there. Basin entry fees were discussed, vacancy tax fees were discussed, all the things are still on the table. So while I'm not sure if I would say I would never come back in front of you on this particular subject, I think we are trying to figure that out. And I know Commissioner Hill is leading that charge. I did want to add one quick thing if I could. So the 13% tax that's generated off of that $66 million is about $8.7 million. So of that $8.7 million, $2.1 million is returned to source, $2.2 million. And I call return to source to our organization because we're the destination management marketing organization for Washoe Tahoe. Obviously, the RSCVA is very involved in Tahoe as well, and we appreciate those efforts, and we work very closely with the team here. So, but there's $2.4 million goes out of that 13% goes to bonding. So various bonds that the visitor that is coming to Tahoe is putting in about $2.4 million annually out of that 13% to cover bonds for the convention center, the bowling center, the civic center, and others. So there are funds that are supporting infrastructure down here that are being generated. And then I don't see this as any different than that. You asked where would the money come from? It's gonna come out of that $2.2 million that the RSCVA pulls from Big Clay Crystal Bay. How that's done through Cortland's efforts certainly has to be determined.
Is this considered a sponsorship?
What'd you say?
I don't know, I mean, in what context? I'm not sure why that is.
Well, we're giving money to sponsor transportation. To sponsor a group. And in our policy, it basically says not primarily for activities for local residents. Give in fact 60% of it. And I'm not being indifferent to the local residents needing transportation up there. I'm looking at my fiduciary responsibility as far as the RSCVA and what our role in the community is as far as conventions and tourism and how this transportation fits into this. And the policy says not primarily for local residents and roughly over 50% of this is being used by local residents. Does that go against our own policy?
So I'm not sure what are you looking at a statute?
Well, I don't know. I'm asking questions, you know, I'm trying to understand this whole process.
So I'm not sure where that's coming from, the citing here, but I'll say, I think, you know, we've looked at this before, and I think there are two questions here. One is, can you? And the other is, should you?
Right.
Can you? I think the legal answer is yes. I think
Okay.
for all the reasons here, I think there's a nexus between making sure that the transportation up in Tahoe is running efficiently to allow you to use that destination, to market that destination, and keep that destination's appeal. So I think legally you can.
Okay.
The question for this board is, should you? Is that a funding priority? Is that somewhere you want to put money? But I'm not gonna sit here today as legal and say you can't consider this. I think you can. It's up to you to decide if that's a good use of funds.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And
For sure.
I think Mr. J is asking really good questions. I also think that now that Washoe County has stepped up in a big way for the transit, finally, I was able to get that agendized for the board for 400,000 as part of our piece. I think that we are only paying for the tourist piece as part of this. But that's what my thought is.
Yeah, and I would, and I think I said this last year. I mean, Tahoe rarely comes and stands in front of this board and asking for support. I mean, very rarely. Tahoe is used in your name. And so if you think Tahoe is important, these are the things that Tahoe is working on that need assistance in. Transportation is besides workforce housing, and we can have a different conversation about that if you'd like, but besides workforce housing, transportation is our number one issue. So Tahoe doesn't come here to ask too much of this board in support of what we are doing. We certainly asked Ben to be involved in the stewardship council, and he has stepped up in that, and we appreciate this board's support of that. But that is where we're going. We have to make hard decisions in the next couple of years about how the entity of the Tahoe Basin is managed, because it cannot keep going the way it has been. That is clear, crystal clear. So again, Reno Tahoe is in your name. Do you want to support Tahoe, or do you want to just use Tahoe in the name? And I would just leave it at that.
Madam Mayor.
Maybe we just go around like this, so it's fair. Well, first of all, let me just say this. I'm almost wondering if there is a bigger and broader conversation here, because it's related to transportation. And I don't know if that's what we want to be as an organization, that we're going to also invest in that. I also want to be very supportive of our board members. Matter of fact, I believe I've been the one to make many motions for you and be very supportive. I think Richard is asking some really good questions. I also, I think there should be a conversation about when the board member comes to us and to, be supportive and what that looks like, right? Because it is a little bit, I just don't see a lot of board members coming and saying, hey, I'd like this. If that's what we're going to do, then let me know, because I'd love to come to this board too and say, hey, I'd like to invest in affordable housing. I just don't know. I haven't seen a conversation on transportation or affordable housing at the RSCVA. And if that's what our mission is, I think we all want to be supportive. We're all have been very supportive of Tahoe for sure. Yes, I understand it's in the name. We all need to be supporting each other. I also believe that we did support 350,000. Was it 350,000 for transportation efforts, so I think it shows our commitment. And I think that that's valuable. However, I just don't know if this is the right board, if this is what you guys want to do, invest in transportation, then that should be another conversation. Or if we're gonna be investing in affordable housing, that should be another conversation. I absolutely think this is something RTC, we should be having this on our agenda over at RTC. I just don't know if it's necessarily this board. If this is our vision, and I know you say good stewards, we have been good stewards and I want to continue to be. I just don't know if transportation is where we see the vision of what we want to do. And I know they go hand in hand, but I don't ever recall having sort of that we were going to be in sort of the infrastructure aspect of transportation. So, but I've been supportive in the past and I think you know that. I've made the motions many times before. I want to support all of you on this board. I guess I just would like to know what kind of board do we want to be? What do we want to invest in? And I think all of us have initiatives that we would love to be able to get. I mean, if we approve this today, that would be 700,000. I can do math, but I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think,
What's the tone?
yeah, so that's just my concern. So thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Abasar?
So Madam Chair, Andy, TART Connect is different in principle than the fixed line and is paid separately for a different purpose. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are there other TART Connects in different regions around the lake?
Yes, so there are 6 zones in North Shore. We are one of those zones, zone 3. So there is a zone that now incorporates both Kings Beach and Tahoe City. Those were 2 separate zones initially. There's a zone on the West Shore. There's a zone in Truckee. There's a zone in Olympic Valley, and then a zone that goes out to North Shore.
Do you know who pays the portion of TART Connect in those zones?
Yes, the TOT that is generated in eastern Placer County, so the California side of North Lake Tahoe, has a 12% tax. Actually, excuse me, it's 10%, 12 in a certain area. And those funds obviously go to Placer County, and then Placer County pays for those services. Both TART mainline, they put enhanced above the federal dollars, but all of TART.
So Placer County pays for the 5 other zones directly for TART Connect.
Truckee does their own, but again, it's through their TOT collections. So the TOT, the overnight stay that those folks are, that tax is generating from, is what's supporting that transit service on the.
So has there been any outreach to Chair Dent and the board at IFGID about this?
Yes.
What is their response?
So we've had multiple conversations with the GM prior to him departing, and then now the interim GM over there. And it was quite clear that they would not consider the funding of the TART Connect program. It's an interesting board up there, and they're in interesting times right now and have been. So. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
we
sure.
have had many a conversation.
So I guess my question is, and this goes to Andy and Commissioner Hill. You know, I feel my interpretation of general improvement districts in NRS allows for roads and right of passage and roadways and et cetera. And then part of those are traffic control use. And it seems to me that there is statutory provision for GID to spend money on something that helps their community. I mean, IFGID has complained constantly about visitors to their community and the traffic. And this specific purpose is a traffic control effort. In my understanding, right? It also helps move people around, visitors and residents alike. So I understand the need, and I don't want to discount the need, and I understand that we have been supportive in the past, and that's why we're being asked today. But my concern is, are we allowing a board whose responsibility perhaps it should be to pay for this off the hook because they have their own internal turmoil and not stepping up to the table? And so then my follow-up to that is, and I know in GID statute that there's corrective action that can be taken against GIDs that are not fulfilling the mission of statute. Now, that's a bigger, harder issue because now it's on Commissioner Hill and her colleagues to hold them accountable. I guess I'm questioning, I understand what we're supposed to do here, but it seems like this is a pure mission of Incline Village General Improvement District, and Chairman Dent should be leading the charge to pay all of this.
So if I can just respond to one, IVGIT is not responsible for the roads. The highway 28 is NDOT, and the roads are Washington County. I don't know the IVGIT charter off the top of my head, but it is sewer, water, recreation, always something else in there, solid waste. So they are not responsible for the roads. Washoe County plows every road that's not Highway 28 and deals with every road, just as a clarification.
And just as, you know, statute NRS 318120 allows that improvement district within its mission for streets and alleys. And then within that district, they have, I mean, they're allowable to do that. If they choose not to, again, it doesn't necessarily need to be in a charter, they can act on it.
Madam Chair, there's like, as you know, there's political realities and then there's legal realities. So we're in a political realm right now with that, but I hear what you're saying.
My question would, you know, and my preference would be as a authority, see if we can compel a board to actually do their responsibility, that statute has guided them to, that helps their direct residents and visitors and community in some capacity. That's my preference. And I don't, you know, to Commissioner Hill's point, I don't know if there's a political reality there. Maybe there is a legal reality that we hold them accountable.
So then, do we have that authority
The authority to,
try to encourage the Incline GID to consider this as part of the responsibility under statute?
yeah, so I'll say I'm not familiar with it yet and their charge and their charter. I mean, certainly, as Commissioner Hill said, it's political realm. If we want to have those conversations, we can.
Right.
When you're asking if we have the authority to pursue it, can we sue IVGIT to get money for TART? I don't think so.
Well, no.
But we can always have conversations.
And I would just say, Madam Chair, and Andy and Commissioner Hill, I'm happy to involve. I'm not trying to pass the buck on a responsibility of action. I don't know what's going to happen today, but if that is interest of this authority, you know, I've worked a lot with the IVGIT board in the past, and I'm more than happy to volunteer my services to assist as a member of this authority. But again, I'm interested in the rest of the members' comments here.
Thank you, Mr. So Mr. Espada.
I don't know if you think I'm out of order, but.
Your turn.
Oh,
You wanna
I'm
go?
not,
I just had my.
I'm sorry, I saw you turn yours on, yours was already on. Mr. Murdoch, why don't you go first, then I'll go to Mr.
Thank you, Madam
Espada.
Chair. And
I think.
couple just
And then I'll
simple
go back.
questions. And one thing I wanted to say is Reno Tahoe International Airport. That serves everybody. Reno Tahoe International Airport, big transportation hub, would you say?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So Tahoe gets the benefit of the Reno Tahoe International Airport, and the majority of the people that use it that come out of our region, you look at the majority of it, they pay a tax out there that the airport uses. And I just think Tahoe does get the benefit of this operation. We're the Reno Tahoe Visitors Bureau, we're the Reno Tahoe Airport. And Tahoe, to me, is they're lucky to have us involved and getting people up there through the transportation system of air. And then obviously busing, cars or shuttles. So that's one point I'd like to make. Second point is, I'd ask Andy this, how much, Andy, of all the people that ride it, and you, with the lack of low income housing in the incline, are the majority of the riders that you're bringing come from the California side or the incline side?
So when you set up a TART account, a TART Connect account, you create a profile, and then when you call for that, just like Uber, you call for that, the data is there. So in zone 3, you know, obviously the residential side are all, I would say, majority incline residential, that's 60% there. There isn't a lot, there's very little crossover on the TART Connect zones because you can't travel across the zone. Like I can't go from Incline Village to Kings Beach, even though it's only 2 miles down the road from Crystal Bay. And Crystal Bay is part of zone 3. I can't go all the way to Kings Beach. So if you want to do that, you're going to jump on mainline service. So there isn't a lot of crossover. So I would say most of that activity is happening both from the visitor base that's situated in Incline Crystal Bay and the residential base that lives there.
Good to know. And then, if you have ridership out of the California side, I'm sure that they're paying taxes. If they get paid on the Nevada side, they're paying taxes. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how with California being the biggest part of this and majority of the housing in California.
Well, there's certainly on mainline service, there's a lot of labor folks that are coming from California that like living in Kings Beach that go to the Hyatt or go to the hospital and work within the both the tourism and just the economic industry up there. And I would say vice versa. I mean, we also have a lot of J1s that when they're here working in the wintertime, live in Incline Village, but might work in North Star. So they're taking mainline service. We're not discussing mainline service here. Right. TART Connect is really for that. It's a 2-3 mile distant ride, basically.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Taylor.
Yeah, you're welcome. Mr. Spaulding.
Yeah, I don't know where to jump in at. It's funny because I had a list of concerns prior to this meeting and Mr. J covered a good chunk of them. I'm just gonna touch on Mr. Kennedy's comments on can we and should we parent what we can. I do see both sides of the should argument. I would take one more step further on the should argument if we decide that we do want to. I feel like what's the proper level? And when I look at this request at this level, I feel it's pulling us way farther into it than we really need to be for what our responsibility is. I mean, and does give me a sense of heartburn when IVKID and other players aren't, those that are really responsible for this probably should be at the table. And I don't feel that the RSCVA should be pulled in. You know, I feel it's this group's responsibility to really look at a lot of these different requests through a lens of, we just had the CARES campus in 2 or 3 months ago. They didn't actually make an ask. No. I was expecting it. And honestly, I probably agree that we have a certain onus as an organization of partnering when we can, if we're financially healthy to look at it. But again, it gets into like, at what level? We've done the ambassador program downtown in the past. I think it makes a lot of sense. I know you have the River Ranger issue coming up. I think that's something that we ought to really look at. But again, there's always going to be I don't think we should be the lead on those efforts, but I think being a good community partner with tourism, we should. When I see that we're supposed to be 19% of the overall pie and travel North Tahoe is 3%, I tend to back up and go, hang on, if anything, and I'm not saying we should be at 50,000. I'm just saying, I think we need to look at what level if we truly have an interest. You know, I was gonna ask on Placer County. I think on these sustainability efforts, Andy, I'm very sensitive to what you're dealing with. I think we are all doing business extremely different than 10 years ago. And your traditional marketing budget, hate saying it, but that probably goes away and gets redeployed into areas like this. It's the same in whether I'm wearing the Peppermill hat or RSCVA. We're not spending money the same way we were, and we're having to redeploy it in other areas. I'll tell you, as an employer, we all have employee, what am I looking at? We help subsidize our employee RTC tickets, in that is the Peppermill or the Nugget or the Row. I don't know if they're doing it up at the lake, but I think that's on their responsibility. So again, I'm not opposed. I'm opposed to the 350, but I'm open for the discussion of, what is, I'm not totally saying you're on your own, but I know Tahoe's in the name, but Tahoe's also, that's in the county, that's in the tax collection district that's been set up. I don't see that changing now. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm not supportive of the 350, but I'd be open for talking about some other level of involvement. And then I'd say where we can lend pressure, I think there's other players in here that ought to step up. And if, but we can't control it. I don't think in RSCVA, we don't have the ground on it. I don't even know if NDOT, and I don't know if that's part of the federal funding, but I don't even know if NDOT could come to the table with some level. That's my.
Thank you. Mr. East.
Thank you. It appears to me that in 21-22, that it was funded by, Travel North Tahoe, and the RSCVA stepped in to fill that gap in this past year. And it looks like with the funding commitments that you have this upcoming year, you're even with existing service levels, without a commitment from RSCVA. Am I looking at that correctly?
Do you ask that question again? I'm not sure I followed.
Sure. With where we were last year with funding in total, where the program was in funding, it was at 869,202.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It looks like 900,000 now
Right.
without an RSCVA.
as I had mentioned, last year, the spring and fall service was only 4 hours a day. That service has moved to match the summer and winter service of 14 hours a day.
Right.
So we've increased the service hours, knowing that that's what we were eventually going to have to do. We couldn't do that initially because we didn't have the funds to do that. But that's that increased cost, is that service hours for spring and fall.
Right. But is it reasonable, is it fair to say that during those periods of time where we're increasing those service hours, those are not peak periods for visitation? Is that fair?
Those are the peak periods that we actually focus on. So we don't spend a lot of efforts in the summer and the winter marketing travel necessarily into the basin in those periods of time. We focus on that spring and fall season, and we've actually seen the numbers. The daily ridership numbers we're seeing in those seasons are matching what we carry in the high season.
Yeah. My question is it back to the spirit of our mission? If it's visitation, are we really supporting visitation with this 350,000? Because it is increasing the hours, right? We're going to 14 hours a day. What it is? Tell me what it is currently, 6? Is that what you said?
It was last year. That's
So
why
you're already at that.
But yeah, we operated fall in that way. Spring season will start on April 10th. And that spring season would increase from 4 hours a day to 14 hours a day. We have already done that in the fall.
All right, thank you.
Mr. J, would you have another comment?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I'm gonna put on my economist hat on now. I know a little bit about economics, and we've got a recession coming up. And we need to think about that as fiduciaries. Whether it's a big recession, it's not, I can pretty much tell you, it's not gonna be the 08-09 recession, great recession we had, but we have something coming up. And in that time, we have to really be stewards of our finances. Now, we talked about $90,000 over projections and some investment income, but what's it gonna be like a year from now when we go into a recession? It's not a matter of if we go into a recession, it's when. How deep is that recession gonna be? How is it gonna affect tourism? And I think that's important. There's 350,000 we're talking about. Christine, how much did our photo shoot cost roughly that we recently did?
We haven't done one since 2021, but the one that we're looking at doing this spring, we are looking at around 300
Okay, so that's pretty,
facilities, M&C Sports Leisure.
right, and we need to update that. It's been 3 years. So that's almost what we'll be spending to do what we're supposed to be doing, marketing, updating our material and doing that, but at the same time, preparing for a recession that is coming. So we have to put our fiduciary hats on and consider that aspect as well. Thank you.
Mr. Murdock?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that we got 50,000 from Travel Nevada, Andy.
Not from, that's our organization.
I'm
Travel
sorry.
North Holland, Nevada.
What is it? I'm talking, I'm sorry, Nevada Commission on Tourism.
No.
You have not,
We have no money. We have asked about that. We have,
Yeah.
brought that forward to Brenda, but haven't been successful in getting funds there. So the money that our organization is now called Travel North Holland, Nevada. Those are those funds that are coming in. Our organization, when this started, spent the bulk of the cost of it. Again, about $500,000 that we put in of our TOT funds that are generated in Incline Crystal Bay. Similar to what we're asking for here with funds that are generated in Incline Crystal Bay that go to RSCVA.
the reason I ask that is I sit on that board and we do all kinds of grant funding for the rurals, for Douglas Rural County. We do it for whether it's Churchill County or any of them. And there's money there, and it's state money, and it's run by the state, and the highway is run by, is it a state highway or I'm just trying to think out of the box here where there's money that is more earmarked for stuff like this, especially on the NDOT.
And I'd say Travel Nevada, most of those funds are marketing grants. Or they do have destination infrastructure grants that they've done every couple of years, but they haven't done that.
Yeah, I've seen all the money that goes out, and if you put the ask together, it's even Southern Nevada gets money. So I think it's appropriate that you go there for some dollars as well, which is more in line of work what they do, especially for, it'd be considered Washoe County, obviously, because it's by county. So that's all I'd like to bring that point up.
Do I have any other comments? Any more questions? So, is there anyone looking at a possible motion?
Well,
Mr. Abelsler?
Yeah, I guess I sort of have a question to to Andy, Madam Chair, and Commissioner Hill, but Andy, since the community is impacted, I think if these funds did not get appropriated, what would change? Sounds like there'd be a reduction of hours, operations would pull back a little, but it wouldn't stop, it wouldn't eliminate the program, but it would certainly stifle what has been built. Are we under a time crunch is a question. What's I'm new to the board. Have we done this before? Have we created a working group to go out as ambassadors and compel individuals in the community to actually be responsible of the community they've been elected to serve? Those types of things.
To answer your question on the service, we'd have to figure that out.
Okay.
We'd have to go back to the partners and the vendors, and it definitely, I think, would affect hours, no doubt. And again, being that transportation is the number 1/2 item in Tahoe, this discussion is not going away by any means.
I think the second question was maybe for you, Chair, or legal, about, do we do that as an authority? Do we do working groups or?
Yes, and so I can address that if you'd like. So with open meeting law, if we create a working committee of board members, that's an open meeting law committee, similar to marketing, legislative finance. So typically, no, we don't. And maybe I can sort of help move things along here. I think you've got a few options as far as motions. I think you can You can agree to fund it up to 350,000 or any lesser amount. You could just say no, or you could, say no or defer with maybe some instruction of sort of what you want to see before this comes back for consideration again.
What about? Again, I think we need sort of a check mark of criteria. Does it meet this? Does it meet this? I guess the board, you guys have to figure out what do you want to be? What do we want to focus on? Alexis and I have had very extensive conversations about these types of initiatives at RTC. She knows I'm very supportive. I believe there is a role there. I just, don't know. We've never done transportation before. And, you know, and I wanted to be supportive. Like you said, we've all been good stewards. So I would just, send it to Madam Clerk, make a motion. Or Madam Chair, what are you, Chair? You're Madam Clerk. She's like, oh my God, not me.
Okay.
But yeah, and maybe the board gets there, maybe they don't, but that, you know, as Chair,
Mhm.
go ahead.
I would say one thing I will, compliment you on, Andy, and where this has transpired from where you first came to us. And really the growth that you've seen, because initially you came with this concept and it was just getting going and the ridership was not extensive. There were a lot of questions and concerns, and then we did invest in it. And I really see all of these numbers that you've got, the need and the utilization and kind of that stewardship piece and really see so many positives that's encouraging to me. And then I want to obviously support that this continues. I probably would agree with a lot of the consensus around the table with Mr. Squaga on that amount. What is that amount? And we have actually, I've had conversations and we're going to look at this next budget. And I've been talking to Courtney and staff about us looking, especially when we have augmentations, of us looking at some kind of community fund that's different from the other things we do. So something that's different than the marketing we do, that's different than the, them looking for new events, special events funding, that's pretty broad based, everything from utilizing our facilities when there's fire, or when there's outages of electricity, to other community as community stewards, opportunities, whether it's in Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, the lake, exploring that as a possibility, looking at next year's budget, because there are a lot of things, and we as community partners, that's part of our mission really too, is to do what we can to improve our communities and our quality of life for our residents, is as well as tourism, and a lot of, the tourism and the dollars we generate help us do that, because we've got the budget to do that with room tax dollars that, filter into all of this. So, I look at it as definitely wanting to support, but at different levels. I don't know that 350 today is necessarily what I'm feeling from this board. And I don't know if we'd be looking at half of that, 175 or 200. I'm gonna throw that out and get some thoughts from everyone before.
I
Mr. East?
suggest 75,000 to match, Travel North Tahoe's contribution. That would be my suggestion for a motion.
Of the 75?
The 75 that Travel North Tahoe has committed for this upcoming year, that we match that number. So that would be my recommendation for a motion.
Just
for clarification, is their level 75 or 50?
Theirs was 50, it is now 70. The way I think I read it, did I miss that, Andy?
We are committing 75,000 this year.
So my thought is that we would match
So
that.
we're picking up more of the local match. 75 is what's in our budget.
And I said half, which would be 175, which of course there's a big difference there. But on the 75, other thoughts, do I just let him make that motion and then we can have discussion? Do you want to make that a motion and then I'll open it for discussion?
Sure, I'm
Let's go
happy to
into
make a motion to approve funding for Incline Village, Crystal Bay, Visitors Bureau, the Incline Village, Crystal Bay TART Connect for $75,000.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second for sake of discussion.
Okay, I have a second from Mr. Esquaga. Open to discussion. Mr. J.
Thank you. I was gonna recommend 50, simply again, because I'm looking at a couple different things. One, our role as providing transportation, but two, looking forward and thinking our stewardship as fiduciaries, preparing for a recession that is coming. I would feel a little more comfortable with 50,000. That's just my opinion.
Okay, other discussion. Mr.
Madam Mayor, sorry. I am not going to support, and here's why. If Alexis, you want to bring it over to RTC, I'm happy to support the full ask. I just don't think that this is, since I've been on the board, and yes, I think we can all say this is connected. We can say affordable housing is connected to our workforce. There's always some tie-in. Of course there is. I just believe that this is something that should be over at RTC. I'm totally happy to support you. I would say, Andy, bring it to our board, 100% in support. I'm not going to support it at this board, because I do believe it is a real transportation ask. I felt like, it was important to be supportive of board members when they come and ask for whatever it is they need. I think, I've always shown that. I made the motions. I want to continue to do that, but I would be happy to support 100% at the RTC.
Thank you. Mr. Esquaga.
Actually, that throws a wrinkle into what I was thinking.
Sorry, you should have come first.
I know, I knew I should have. But in that sense, though, what would the timeliness be if it were to go to RTC? And would it come back to it? I mean, is this something that, okay, next RTC meeting, this gets agendized? And then we can take another look at it in February, March, or?
And I'm happy to make that request too, if that's not something you want to do, but I sit on that board and I'm happy to make that request.
Well, and I guess with Andy, on that point, what is your timeline for knowing you had this funding? Is it fiscal year, so be July?
No, this is for service this fiscal year. So we would be making adjustments onto the program if these dollars weren't coming in. I'm just trying to find what the breakdown by season. I'm not sure if I have that. But it would have consideration on the springs schedule, for sure. I think we're good through winter with the funding that we have, from the other partners. We have the funding in place to operate through winter. Could mean that there is no service in the spring, unless we have other opportunities that we can find some funding.
Okay, Mr. Esquaga, do you have anything else?
No, in my head, I was leaning more towards something like a 50, but I'm not gonna over 25,000. I do think, and I'm just repeating what I said earlier, I think there are these various related opportunities like this that I don't think it's a real stretch thing. We have some involvement I think this is an important piece of the tourism experience, but, anyway, so I'm open to that discussion.
Mr. Abelsar?
Madam Chair, so I'm struggling with, as a board member, our mission of the board and what we're supposed to be doing, because I would rather just fund the whole thing versus 50, because that's what is being asked, and as a board member, being good stewards. But my bigger question, is that even our responsibility? It does seem logical that our transportation authority is the body that should fund this, or it seems logical that the government that functions up in that region that directly affects the citizens and visitors of that region should fund it, not your organization or ours. And I feel bad that, this is the great work that Andy's put into this, but having to constantly ask and piecemeal dollars together, I think is unfair to the program, right? And this is the sustainability of the program. So I think I'm struggling in those two paradigms. My gut is we need a dedicated source of revenue to keep this going, to help those individuals. I don't know if it's our scope as the authority. And that's, I think, what's the slippery slope then at that? What does it open up for the other requests to come to us that are loosely associated with our mission?
Thank you, Mr. Avatar. And I'm gonna go to you in a second, Andy. I guess as we're talking about this, source of streaming source or a constant source of revenue, that I would agree entirely. If you've got to piecemeal this together every single year and the program is becoming more successful, and all of a sudden you don't know what's going to happen. Have you looked at minimal costs for those rides? $1, $2. Is that something to provide an income source instead of it being free? Have you done an analysis if that's feasible, and then what kind of income you can generate to just charge a very minimal amount, but some kind of revenue from people that are riding it?
So the mantra in transportation moved to free to the user a couple of years ago, certainly during the pandemic. I know RTC still does charge for rides, from my understanding. Both the Tahoe Transportation District that operates transit on the South Shore, as well as the partnership of the South Shore Transportation Management Association that operates their Connect, it's called Lake Link down there, but it's their microtransit. And then Placer County, it's all free to the rider right now. There has been some discussion about a fare box again. The fare box that goes in at the top isn't the same money that comes out at the bottom, just because of the cost that's associated with that collection. And so if you look at the ridership in a year, you might get, $90,000 to $100,000 to help offset that. So is the revenue generation worth the cost of that? So, but that is part of, I think, the conversation that needs to happen. I think the other one that needs to be discussed is this pilot program is a pilot program, and that's what you do with pilot programs. You figure out how they work, you figure out how they can get funded, and then you try to figure out how to make it moving forward. And I think that's the intent, is to get federal dollars behind this in this next year, because we are going out for an RFP for service. We did a sole source for the pilot program in order to get it up and running because of the complexities of going through the federal government. So that is part of that. And I know that Washoe RTC is very engaged in those discussions as well. So I think, yes, we've been passing the hat, but that is not how, it's not uncommon for how pilot programs work, not only probably in the Tahoe Basin, but elsewhere, to get a program going to figure out, does it work? Is it even sustainable, and how do you move it forward?
Okay. And on the federal side of it, I would be more than happy to see, I'm on for National League of Cities, I'm on a advocacy, infrastructure, and transportation subcommittee. And I will be in DC in March again, and I'd be happy through NLC to look at, there's so much money going to infrastructure, but transportation is a big piece. And to explore maybe some avenues or resources that I could refer to your group of maybe NLC and other cities, because we look at what other cities are doing and how they're funding things. And maybe I'd have some good resources that I'd be willing to share with your group as you're moving forward, looking for that federal money.
And if I can, Madam Chair, just just a couple of points I want to reiterate. Of that 13% tax, again, that's coming in, $8.7 million are generated in TOT and in Klein Crystal Bay. Of that, only $2.1 million goes back to sole source, back to our organization for our efforts, not dissimilar to how the TOT funds this organization. 2.4 million is going to bonds that support facilities down here in this basin, which I would look at facilities not that much different than I look at the transportation system. It is a facility, it just has wheels on it. So there are funds that are generated in Tahoe that support facilities down here in Reno, and this particular effort is again, no different from what I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I don't want it to be this Tahoe versus Reno, and I hope that that's not at all what folks are thinking that I'm representing at all, at all. I'd like Washoe County to step up in a bigger way on this effort. $400,000 is all I could get through. I don't even know if next fiscal year, if that's gonna be possible, but this legislative session, I think there's opportunities for a surcharge to be in Crystal Bay and and Incline Village. That's something I've been talking to our legislators about. I think that the same thing that downtown Reno does with its surcharge, there's opportunities for us to support visitor activities are not correlated to the RSCVA. And so I think we can grow the pot of money. I don't want to, I always tell this to Andy, and we kind of disagree in some ways on this. Like, I don't think we need to take the pot of money, but I think it's fine that Andy asked for the 350. I am more than happy to support Mr. East's, his motion. It's still on the table. Let's see if it goes anywhere. I know that, Mr. Murdoch has his, he also has a comment, but I'm happy to move forward with that amount of money and continue the work. We've asked NDOT, certainly we can ask them again. And there's other opportunities to work with the state. So I don't want this to be like, give us the money, you owe us the money. It's just, I think that Andy's like, we have a 350 gap. We're going to go back to RSCVA. If they don't, go for the full gap, we're going to continue to work and piecemeal the money together. So, I just wanted to say that for the record.
Thank you. Mr. Murdoch?
My comment is, I appreciate that all our political folks are willing to jump in and hit the state, talk to the RTC, talk to the feds. I think that's really the role of the governments around here, federal and state. And I think more so than us giving the money. I'd like to see us go back to the drawing board. I'm all for finding other avenues and supporting it. I'm not sure about we're gonna have a little budget crunch here. I'm not sure that's needed right now. And even the 75, I'd like to see an alternative program through all of you as our political representatives going and trying to find the money.
Any other comments? I have a motion on the floor. I have a second for that motion. We need to restate it. Motion to support Tart Connect for $75,000. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Do we need to do a roll call? Mara, can you do roll call, please?
Mr. Albemarle?
No.
Mr. Squaga?
No.
Chair Bybee?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Mr. East?
Yes.
Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Chang?
No.
Mr. Murdoch?
No.
Mayor Sheedy?
No.
4 ayes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
And I will just add, for the record, that I've already sent an agenda request item for this at the RTC. Okay.
Correct.
So I want everyone to know that I'm happy to partner, work with you, to make sure that that becomes a reality over RTC. We've talked about this extensively, that there needs to be a lot more infrastructure and programming over there. And so, like I said, I'm happy to support. I've already sent a letter asking for an agenda item.
Okay. I'll have a conversation with my mayor for RTC. I mean, I think the RTC, I don't disagree at all. RTC is, and whatever we can do.
You do, yes, that would be great.
Yeah, so whatever we can do, and I agree, with helping facilitate other avenues. But at this time, the motion does fail, and, as we move on.
Well, I don't think
Okay.
it's fine today. I'd be prepared to make another motion and say, go through those steps, but honestly, I think I don't even think an emotion is needed. I'd say run the other traps that we just discussed, and then if there's another time coming back to the group, I'm open for discussion, but I think we need to exhaust where the responsibility truly lies. And honestly, it's more from a governmental oversight, so.
But I appreciate Andy, because you want Andy on your team, because he's willing to go wherever he needs to get it funded and done. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and
Doing it for
that's
2.5 years.
that's
so
commendable.
Mhm.
That's commendable. But I do want the board to know that I'm supportive, and I believe we will have support over there. And I think that that is probably the appropriate place when it comes to sort of the governmental agency side.
Okay. Okay, thank you all. Good discussion. Moving on to item E2, board update regarding RCVA President CEO search. update on where we are, since today we're not choosing a new CEO, and we thought we were originally. Molly, do you want to set the table and I can add more details?
Oh, sure. As everybody knows, we were originally planning to have this week of stakeholder meet and greets, one-on-ones with board members, followed by presentations of CEO candidates. Once we made announcements of who those candidates were, we did have one candidate come out of withdraw from the process. There was some discussion and a decision to include another candidate. Winter Partners needed some time to continue their very extensive vetting processes of these candidates. And so they needed some additional time. Therefore, we thought it best, rather than really inconveniencing a lot of third parties, those stakeholders, et cetera, that were going to give us very valuable input, we went ahead and moved it a month later so that we could facilitate Winter Partners completing their vetting process and allow everybody to get this back on calendar, as opposed to just, moving it like a week or something. So that was the decision. And right now we are anticipating, I know you talked to Winter Partners just the other day, but I believe early next week, we will know who that other candidate is.
So yeah, we're at 3 candidates, and my whole, Molly and I, every other week, we're on a phone call with Winter Partners on the status of the search and of them bedding down to 9 from 146 conversations and contacts to 9 down to 7. And then they told us in those last few weeks that those top candidates were hard to come up with 3. So there was a really level playing field on their top candidates on how to get to the 3. So in the decision to go down to that next, candidate, and the unfortunate thing is with the candidate that we had, decided a couple hours after we released the name, which created a whole lot more of an issue for Ben, for all of us, because we've got 3 names and then all of a sudden we don't. So the timing was not perfect. But on the other hand, if the candidate was not committed, I would much rather they drop out now than we go through a whole process, hire someone, and then we're doing, the same thing we've done in the past of not keeping someone here. So I don't necessarily look at that as a bad thing. The timing wasn't great, but the fact that when he dropped out and I went back to Winter, Tina and I did, and we knew those next candidates were at a level that were pretty comparable to the candidates we had. And the time for them, when they did the final vetting process, which was extensive background and some other assessment, they only did that for the top 3. So that next candidate had not had that process completed. So that's what they're in the process of doing. I talked to them yesterday. Everything is in line. Those last steps, they have a deadline tomorrow from the candidate for everything. And so by early next week, we should have that candidate and their bio all sealed up and ready to go. The plan on, and really only someone who suggested, let's just go to the next board meeting. It's on all of your calendars and from our stakeholders' perspective. And if there's any glitches with this background processing and we set it out for 2 weeks and all of a sudden we can't do it, we didn't want to have to keep remessaging, rescheduling, and all of our schedules, calendars are busy also. So really, it made sense when Molly said, let's just take a deep breath. Let's go to our February meeting that is already scheduled. It gives us the time for that last vetting, for Mira to get out to our stakeholders on the process, but really the calendar will look at just like it did this week. So really, Mira will be contacting all of you to set up those one-on-ones, same exact process. One-on-ones, you each will have 30 minutes with each candidate, and Mira will schedule that on that Tuesday afternoon, the 20th. The 21st, the next morning, Wednesday, would be stakeholders input, followed by senior staff input, and then any board that could not schedule. And as it turns out, 6 of us were scheduled for Tuesday. And I know all of our calendars change, so you'll have an opportunity to give Mary your availability, but the calendar will look just like it did. We're just a month later than we would have been, but still moving forward with the process. And I think feedback that I've gotten from a few stakeholders in talking about having the three candidates is really what we talked about the whole time. That was what our contract was with Winners. That's what our messaging has been with the community and with stakeholders has been for three. And so really to still have those three candidates, I think was important. And also for as extensive as the search has been, two of those candidates that we already have are local, and this third candidate is from out of area. I know nothing about the last candidate, but I know they're from out of area. And I think all of that, I feel confident about it. This is agendized today, informational, but I am absolutely open to conversation or to comments from the board, but it's not an action item, but any input you all want to give, questions you have, things you want me to find out, or your priorities or anything, input that you have, absolutely welcome to do that.
Okay, so evidently you can't make a motion, correct?
Yeah, we're not action, it's not for action.
So we gotta do it at another board meeting?
So if we want to take a different course than what's just been outlined, it would require either a discussion at next month's meeting or a special meeting where we're properly agendized to vote on something.
Okay. I would be fine with if you just made that motion. So, I think we just move on and get another candidate and, let's go. Right?
So just so we're clear, so you're good with what's been presented, right? So
Yeah.
bringing in three candidates considering next month, because if that's your feeling, we don't need to do anything. That's already in motion. We don't need
I
to
just
vote on
think
that.
it's not a big deal, just whatever Winners thinks they need to do. I think, I don't know if the board feels strongly about it. I don't see it as being a big deal or should be a big deal. Just bring it back to another meeting so we can. The one disappointment I was disappointed in is that it wasn't an action item. I think it should have been agendized as an action item just because, then we gotta get back in another meeting. And I think we have to be cognizant of the time that we all spend here. Cause I gotta get out of here soon. I know all of you guys are busy too, but I'd like to see more items that we can take action on so we can be a little bit more streamlined in the process. So, and we'll bring it back, but I don't know. That's just my feeling.
Right.
Well, just to be clear, yeah, we don't need to bring it back. So we're bringing three candidates to the February meeting to be considered. At the February meeting, the board will choose a candidate. So those wheels are in motion. So that's the update part. So
I think what the mayor's referring to those is when we made the decision that rather than sticking with two candidates, going to three, that was not something that was discussed among the board in a public setting, that we made that decision as a group.
Molly, do you understand why we did that?
Why we went from 2 to
Why-
3, that
yeah.
was, well, and Ben can speak towards it too, but basically, it was the chair's decision as to whether or not to go from 2 to 3. We had always messaged that we would have 3.
Yeah.
And then feedback from Winners was also that it was a very tight group. All of those candidates are very level set and they were going with the 3 number. And so I think that that's why really thinking about having more options for this board was really, I think, where the decision came from.
My perspective is just socializing that rather than just getting an email saying it's been decided.
Yeah.
Is what bothered me.
Okay.
Fair enough.
And Ben, you had a comment on, I'm not sure how you message that. On that you had,
yeah, I think so.
the board had approved.
Sort of the thought process was that it had always been presented to the board to have three, and that's what the board had approved. And so that's what we weren't changing course. We were just staying with what was in our agenda.
Well,
I think that's what.
But sort of to that point, and I don't want to raise anything, but I remember when I think it was the very first meeting I sat here, there's this long conversation, we talked about process, and I remember we sat here and Winners Partners said, we might recommend 2 or 3. And that was their statement to us, but it's the decision that they wanted to make as a firm, and we said, we'll sit back, let you do your process. So I don't know if I agree with the capitulation that there was always 3. And frankly, the way I looked at it, we did have 3 and one person self-selected out of the process. There's 3 candidates still today. They gave us 3 candidates. That's what we paid them to do. So, you know, in my opinion, I would prefer actually to expedite the process. I think that this organization has gone too far without a leader at the helm. I think we need to, I would recommend we get a special meeting to go as quick as possible. We have 2 candidates right now, and I'm fine with proceeding forward with the 3 candidates that they recommended to us. I don't know if it was always 3. I remember sitting here and listening to their process and saying, well, we won't even know the other candidates out of respect for them and their former employers or their current employers. And so, I just would have preferred maybe a decision of the board on that. And then I also think that waiting until the 20th of February is a long time for the direction of this organization.
Well, and I appreciate, Mr. Reeves, what you're saying too. In our messaging, which really Ben was doing all the messaging, and Molly, because I really depended upon them heavily to make sure legally and that we were following, that the process was secure, that I wasn't just making decisions. I had their advice and their input all the way along to help make the correct decisions. I think the messaging on how, you know, why the decision to go to the 3 that Ben and Molly just gave you today, would have been more helpful so that you didn't feel, I don't want you to feel that, oh, well, that was just, you know, that was just her decision. And yet that's what this board has talked about through the process and felt like that's where we.
Well, with the candidates being identified though, I mean, respectfully, with the candidates being identified already, I mean, the time to say, hey, how do we feel about the 2 remaining? Do we want to make a decision among those 2 or not? I think is something that should have, again, just been discussed among this board to determine whether or not that was the right course. We can make a decision and move forward. And then that wasn't done. So
Okay.
that's my concern.
And I appreciate.
I
that.
also want to say,
Mhm.
I think transparency is important because people were coming to me before we knew the candidates. That's problematic. And that's problematic in a board that is supposed to be very, you know, forthright and transparent, right? And then the other thing I would say is that, you know, we're talking about, you know, the board process, this, that, and the other, but also, you know, what that also says to the other candidates. Because honestly, when you go out, I don't know about your organizations, but at civil service and other departments through the government, you cannot list shop. It's a real thing. There is a term called list shopping. And that's really what we're doing here. I don't mind at all, because I believe, you know, winners, you know, I've been skeptical of this from the beginning. I've been through 3 of these already. I think the process has always been problematic. But I would like to believe, because I've had a couple meetings with winners, like all of you guys have, so I haven't done anything that no one else has done. And they made me feel better about the process, because you guys really wanted to felt that they were skilled enough to get it done, right? But I will say, it's a little disappointing. I feel like that, you know, I think to your point, that there should have been a conversation about where did you guys want to go? What did you want to do next? Instead of just, this is the way that it's going to be. Because then I think we all go out there and sort of wear the decision. So I just would ask, I was also uncomfortable that people knew about our selections before the board did.
So
And
people told you they knew who the finalists were before we got those names released?
there were people in the public that said, I had heard this, I had heard that, I had heard this. Now, I don't know if that's all hearsay, okay? That's hearsay. But I do think there should have been a better process where we were all brought in together and said, here's the names we're going to be releasing. So everyone could have had this information at the same time. I think that would have been a better process.
You guys sent it to the board before we released anything to the media. Correct.
Yes, any informal channels that you're getting information from, it's not coming from us. So we did our best to try to, like, to respect. Yeah,
I
we
don't
did.
think you, I'm saying, when these candidates were obviously identified, then there was some conversation of it out there, right? Some were, some weren't. So you never know where that information comes from. But I felt like the process should have been, hey, they've made a selection. We would like to let the board know that there's been a selection, right? And here are the names, so that we didn't hear about it from other people.
But that is what we did, right?
So I sent those out as soon as I had them. So I didn't sit on the names, I didn't know the names and sit on them. As soon as winners gave them to us, we gave them to the board.
But that's my point. So before that, before you got them, other people got them.
Yeah.
Other people were probably speculating because it wasn't released. I didn't know, and I've been every other week on the phone with Molly and with winners till they gave it to Ben and Molly. I didn't have it either. So anyone in the public that was speculating on names was pure speculation because it literally did not land until you had it and sent it immediately to the board. I got it at the same time all of you did.
I also think you have to be aware that we work with a lot of groups that are not used to the public process that we have to follow, and it can be challenging.
Yeah.
And even board members have never sat on a quasi-governmental board and have issues with that, right? So there are some transparency issues and things that we need to continue to follow. And I would also remind Ben and Molly that everyone in this board also is held to that standard of when they signed up to be on this board, right? They fall under a certain criteria of sort of duties and responsibilities. So I just think that that's why the transparency piece matters. But when you work with outside boards that aren't used to that, or agencies, sometimes they don't realize that we have to be held to a different standard, I guess is my point.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to reiterate that when we're dealing with other outside agencies.
Yeah, and I think Ben makes an extraordinary effort and Molly does too, but a lot of your communication comes from Ben. And he's always like reminding us, sometimes you're like, I know this, I know, but reminding us, you know, what we can and can't share, in all of his emails, and we've had a lot in the last month, reminding us kind of what those, and you're right, because it's
the other people that aren't.
okay.
So that's a problem.
Gotcha. Okay, so, any other, conversation, Mr. Murdoch?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the questions that I said, it would have been nice to have the option to have a special meeting. And it seemed like we made a decision and we all found out after the fact. To me, I knew nothing. So that's all I'd like to say is,
Okay.
why wouldn't we have done a special session or moved this along? But like I said, Ben's communications have been great when you get them. But again, stakeholders or board members, none of us he didn't know anything. And I felt like if we request a special session, then we could have been updated on everything. That's my 2 cents.
Can I bounce in on that one right there? 'Cause my question is, on Saturday morning at 8:35 a.m. in the morning, I sent both the chair and the legal counsel a request to have a special meeting. Okay, I said, we agreed to a process, which we obviously did, had a recruiting group, develop a group, and the names for interviews. Fortunately, due to circumstances under control and the county pulled out, which leaves us in a precarious situation. I know the perception, we're working on this, blah, blah, blah. The one is, do we move forward with 2 candidates, which are both local, or do we ask for a 4th candidate with slot number 3? Therefore, I'm formally asking for a special meeting of the board of directors of RSCVA. Thank you for the consideration. So I think I requested a meeting because I understand this is it's non-action. We can't take any action here. So I really wanted to have a special meeting so we could really discuss this, come up with a plan of action and move forward. It is what it is. We are where we are. So, we're going to move forward, but I did ask for a special meeting.
And I knew I added this to the agenda. It originally was not on the agenda. Well, the agenda was choosing the CEO. So the whole agenda today was what we could put together last Friday to get out to you. So, wanted to bring this up, wanted to hear from you, and I appreciate the input, absolutely. And as we move forward to timeline, Mr. Adams, so as I explained, really getting, not crunching, I would hate for the background to take a little bit longer for anything to try to do it in 2 weeks. And then we can't, and then we're making another change. I don't think respects everybody's calendars, everybody's schedules, including our stakeholders. This gives us the time to do it. We know we're meeting in February, and I don't feel that 1 month compared to 2 weeks from now, is that big of a difference, because it has taken us this long, but that was the purpose, to make sure that we were mindful, we weren't rushed, and we were doing it, and we were getting it right. So, just trying to say.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I'm speaking in uncertainties, but who's to say that the next recommended candidate gets out there and then pulls their name out in the process, and then we're stuck again with two. I guess I'm worried about the length of the time that this takes, and I don't know what a special meeting would entail or have, since we can't act on anything today. My gut is, could we all have an agendized meeting sometime soon where we can talk and make action about the process? Because these things are gonna happen. There's gonna be, there's gonna be, like community response and engagement. I feel as if it might be beneficial for us to have a meeting sooner than later to talk about the process, so we all are on the same page. Because what happens if another candidate and you're put in the same situation again, and Winners recommends one thing, and I just think it'd be beneficial to you to have your board saying, hey, here's the process in which we should go.
Well, and I think at this point, and as far as that third candidate that we have now, is a firm go. She's reassured me that isn't going to happen. That candidate will not be dropping out. And you're right. I mean, nobody knows its life and its people. And if something happens, and that might be something that if we wind up in that situation, might be, you know what, we do need, I would be willing at that point to say, okay, we thought we moved forward and everything is going to work out fine. But if we have another roadblock like this, then I've heard you today, and we call a special meeting and decide where we drop back and punt from there. So yeah, I'm absolutely open to that for sure.
And then we get to this on the February meeting, it is agendized for actionable versus informational, no matter what.
Well, the February meeting would be what this one was, and it's the interview process, the presentations by the candidates, the interview process, and there won't be anything else on that February meeting unless I have from staff, if I have something time specific that you guys need an approval on, or Courtney does financial, we have consent, or we'd have one item like we did with the board positions today, but really it would be the whole process for the meeting would be what we were going to do today, which is start from finish, action, interview, discussion, and a decision. So, but I do hear you loud and clear. And if I wind up with something else, knock on wood, then I will absolutely, that's the route I will go. So I've heard all of you. Thank you. Ms. Hill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I do think the board is saying though, I don't know, I'm hearing, couldn't we have a special meeting next week to discuss this? Has the candidate already been notified?
Oh, yeah, they're in full background check. They're in full background check, and all the work will be done tomorrow for that candidate to be added to our, to make it our third candidate. It's in the works already.
Sure. But I mean, we could delay the messaging, meet on Wednesday or Thursday next week.
Or the
depending on-
perfect,
It sounds like people want to discuss the process. That's I'm just trying to back up what I'm hearing in the board meeting and we can still have our meeting, when is our meeting to discuss the recruitment, as well, and make a decision from there. So I guess that's what I'm hearing from the board. So I don't know.
Are we too late on that now, because we've already bringing that third candidate out? I'd hate the messaging that it would send out. I get exactly where you're coming
and
from.
I'm hearing all of you, so I absolutely, if we wind up with, like I said, if we wind up with another situation with this candidate or just not having the three, we will do a special meeting to do that. But right now, decision was made with myself, with the firm, and with Molly and Ben's approval of, are we stepping outside of our bounds? Is it legally, are we, and I try to be, ethically, I couldn't say, but really trying to preserve the process that we started in the beginning. And like Ben has said all along, you know, this was the process that we had decided on, and you're not doing anything different. You're not making, you know, you're not deciding, oh, we're only gonna go with one, or we're only gonna go with two. I was going with what we originally had planned, and so he was telling me that it really, that we were good to go with that. So we're into that process. If anything changes, obviously I've heard all of you today, and I'm hoping that's not where we have to go, but we would do a special meeting to do that. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all your input. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close that item. I'm on item F, board member announcements, reports and updates. Mr. J, I bet you have an airport update.
Well, of course I do. Why wouldn't I? April 11th will be our ribbon cutting for the new ticketing counter. You'll get invites. 11 o'clock on April 11th. I'll get you all the information you need. It's very exciting. We walked through it a couple weeks ago. It's going to be great. We moved forward on the concourse. We're about 30% plan built right now. It's looking very exciting. It just keeps on getting better and better. When this project is done, it's going to be amazing. We're in the process of the headquarters, which, we are so tight. We have absolutely no room. I mean, when I say no room, we don't even have storage space. So we're looking to build right next to the southwest, that little southwest counter, that little parking lot building, a 4 to 5 story building. First floor will have the police. Remaining floors will be administration, so that's moving forward. Conrack Solution, the ground transportation, moving forward, looking really good on that. So needless to say, we've been extremely busy, but I think the April ribbon cutting is going to be exciting, and you're going to see a whole new change to that when we walk through it. The lighting from the windows that we have redone is just going to be absolutely amazing. Transportation remaining strong. We're dealing with some routes that we've lost due to some mergers being declined by the government, so we'll just have to go back and sharpen our pencil. Trish and Hassan are out working extremely hard. I know right now this is the best level of cooperation we've had between the airport and the RSCVA. In the past, it was kind of a little difficult trying to get meetings, things like that. But I know, Rick, you've been involved in a lot of stuff. Thank you so much. But we are working extremely close, and I think, Rick, if you'll agree with me, we're probably working the closest we ever have.
I think all entities are working good. We're getting to row in the boat all the same way.
Exactly.
We cannot afford not to have a flight come in here with butts and seats, heads and beds. I mean, it's real simple. The more flights we have, the impact economically is unbelievable. And you see Vegas has landed a huge deal with Hawaiian Airlines. And what's interesting about that is I did text Tina, and her response was great because Alaska is buying Hawaiian.
Correct.
So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for us in the future, is what I got from Tina, just to reiterate what you're saying. So everybody is really trying to grab more air service. We need it. And, I think to Andy's point about stewardship, the more airplanes we have flying in here, the less cars on the highway. So we just, because if you talk to Edon or any of them, the roads are full. So this is, the more planes we put in here, then you got to force them to get on buses or whatever, hopefully. And, that's the equation for this destination.
Yeah, Darren asked me to kind of reiterate the cooperation level that we've had over the last, 6 months. It's just,
Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you for all that you do, Rick. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Richard, didn't you, over the holidays, set records on travel,
Yes.
on the traffic?
Yeah.
So try to manage parking, and did people listen to the messaging and to
They are normal. We
get
have
dropped
yet,
off or
yeah.
park?
They are
Yeah,
listening
sure.
more and more. We have yet to really turn a car away. We just
Okay.
opened up the purple lot. I think it was a purple lot. Oh, pretty sure it's a purple lot, but that was, a couple hundred spaces. That's just right past the off ramp on that big area there. So every piece of dirt that we have out there, we're putting asphalt on to create more parking. We even have, with the convention center, we can use that if we want. We've been approached by Red to possibly use that. So, parking is a short-term issue. It will be resolved. It's just gonna be some headaches, and we have a lot more people hitting our website. We say, go to that because it's a live feed as far as how many parking spots are short-term, long-term, and
Parking garage, when you're hoping completion of that is?
I don't have an exact date. At the next meeting, I'll come up with more, a little more formal presentation.
Okay, perfect.
In the works.
Perfect.
If I may,
Um,
Richard,
Any
if I
other
may say
updates, Mr. Murdoch?
a comment back to Richard. Hey, Richard, I'm just one person. I mean, everybody is lockstep. Stephen, the committee, we're all trying to figure out how to get air service in here with the lake and the valley, and it's a collaborative effort. It's just not me. It's guys
It's
like
everybody.
Kim and Sandy. It's everybody on the RAS board. We're trying to better the place and do what's right. And again, that's why there's such a hyper focus and on air service now. And if you look at Vegas, they just get flights dropped in left and right. We have to actually fight war to get them one. It's a battle, but
Everybody working together.
thank you guys.
So
And thank,
appreciate it.
it's more than, it's what a collaborative effort finally, and love it that the RSCVA jumped in, and thank the chair for that. So good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Just to take one more minute before I relinquish the microphone, but I did want to thank this board for all of the professionalism and the work that you guys do, and the past boards that I've worked with. It's been a very learning 4 years, and I appreciate the effort that we collectively do together. I do want to thank the chairs that I worked with, Mayor Sheevy, Bob Lucy, and of course, Chair Bybee. Thank you for that. And most importantly, I want to thank the staff, because the staff does a lot of hard work for the nation and beyond. And this is a very strong staff, a very good staff. Whatever we can do to continue to support them, I would encourage that. And then as Mr. Long gets ready to take the seat next month, I will commit to still stay involved as a Tahoe representative and representative of the area. There are a lot of issues and items that we all have to address moving forward, and I look forward to doing that from the audience and the podium in the future. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. And thank you again. And thank you for your service. Every one of you that serves on these boards, whether it's 2 or 4 years, huge commitment and really important, because you're bringing to this board, you're bringing the voices of who you are representing, but you're also most importantly, doing it in a collaborative effort that that it's not just Sparks, it's not just the county or casino, or the airport, it's all of us, and everything we do, matters. And so, your perspectives are important, but the fact that we can work together to collaboratively find the best solutions as we move forward and benefit our community and our residents and the quality of life for our residents, because tourism is booming, and because then we don't have to raise their taxes, because we're finding ways to improve our communities through the efforts of this organization and staff too. Absolutely. And I know City of Sparks staff is always been most important to me because I always depend on their expertise. I'm not the expert in any of what all of you do. I mean, I learn from you, I depend on you, and thank you all for that. Any other comments or updates? Yeah, seeing none. Comments from the floor by the public.
No public comment at this time.
Okay, let's close item G. And my favorite part of the meeting, we are adjourned.